All right, wow, what a time it has been, hasn't it? My God, I mean, the last video I did was about silver hitting $19 an ounce, and before I could even find time to make a video of it going up to 20, it jumped up to over $23 an ounce. And I have just been beside myself watching basically all the silver I've stacked accumulate hundreds and hundreds of extra dollars in value. That's been very pleasing to see. Now, obviously, it did dip back down under 23 an ounce so far, but I mean, as you can see, it's sitting right underneath 23 an ounce. What a great rise it's been. I'm glad that I was a bit wrong about the pullback, though I do think the pullback is still coming for not just silver, but for gold as well. And speaking of gold, all-time high close over 1900 an ounce. Now, as people will tell you, in September of 2011, it did get up over this amount, but it didn't close at that high. I believe it got up to like 1921 or something like that. Now, we're going to find out tonight. It's Sunday night as I'm doing this. It's the 26th. So we will find out tonight exactly what happens in the markets when they move pre Monday. I think we're still going to see some kind of a pullback because things just tend to not rise straight up. I do think we have more economic hardships coming. Obviously, you have the expiration of the CARES Act. You have a lot of people getting back into basically not as big of a lifeline for unemployment, even though the government is talking about another stimulus package, printing more money, obviously. So I don't see all that going away, especially in an election year. But we'll get to that. So gold doing just phenomenal. I love watching the value of my gold go up as well, obviously. Silver is making me very proud. I don't think we're anywhere near the cap on any of this. Not even close. I think you're crazy to sell at this point. You're crazy to sell at this point because we are just at the start of this economic shit. This shit show of economics. We are just at the beginning of it. So I think if you're already trying to cash out, you're going to be very, very disappointed at where these numbers go because they're going a lot higher. I mean, gold has already broke its record. Silver isn't even really halfway to its record. It's going over. I mean, it's going to happen. I do think we're going to get a pullback. We might even get another pullback similar to March, depending on what happens with the economy, all these people getting back in unemployment, coronavirus, spreading. All the lockdowns, shutdowns, stay-at-home orders, government bureaucracy, all the things that, throw a wrench in the gears of productivity. All those things are going to continue to happen, so we got to see what happens with that. I do think there's going to be a pullback, but I think for those of us who stack, we are long game stackers. We're not trying to flip these things. I'm not trying to flip my silver or flip my gold. I'm trying to hold on to this so that when I enter retirement age, I've preserved a nice chunk of wealth. Well, if you're like me and that's the reason you stack, you're crazy to get out now. Now, could I be wrong? Sure. And again, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't do this for a living. But I think you would be crazy to pull out at this point. And by the way, speaking of silver, I did receive my JCS gold package. I've been meaning to share that with everybody. Now, I talked about this in a previous video. I believe I paid, I think, $15.51 for a dollar face value of constitutional silver. Everything came in was great. I think it was halves. I mean, I got some standing liberties came in. It was all random. It's their choice. But I got some, 90% JFK halves, a couple of Franklin halves, some Walking Liberty halves. I got a few quarters. I think, a few dollars worth of the 90% quarters. I got Roosevelt dimes, and I got one Mercury dime out of that pack. But I did also, on a separate transaction, buy some more Mercury dimes. So I'm just trying to stock up on all these. I love the dimes. I really love the half dollars. But yeah, it was a good process. Now, obviously, the price of silver has gone up. So face value there is, I believe, at almost 19 an ounce. Face value for 90% silver on silver.com is right at 20 an ounce. I think maybe even 21 an ounce now. So the prices are going up, so I am kind of holding back. I'm way more cautious in buying, which I think anybody would reasonably be when prices have jumped this much this quick. But very, very interesting what's happening. Again, I think you're crazy if you go to pull back. Now, on to our next topic here. We are, as I said, in an election year. So, Trump, Biden, those are the big dogs that are running. I did see a tweet from Joe Biden earlier, and I've talked about this particular topic in a few videos so far on this channel. On my old channel, I did a few videos on it as well. But we have Joe Biden coming out apparently in support of a $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, this would just be one of many issues I have with the Biden campaign. But here we have, no one should have to work more than one job to make ends meet. You have to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and build an inclusive middle class that brings everyone along. Okay, so this is basically more of the left moving further left. Now, Biden is a corporatist shill. He is a centrist in the sense that he's going to play to whatever base. He's not like a principled politician. Do those even exist? He's not a principled politician in the sense like he's not even like Bernie Sanders, someone I completely disagree with on almost everything. Economically, anyways. Bernie Sanders at least has like some kind of core principle that he operates from. I think it's a ridiculous principle, and I think it is inconsistent at best. But at least for Bernie Sanders, I actually believe Bernie Sanders really thinks these things. Now, Joe Biden is just trying to get your vote. Joe Biden is definitely just trying to get your vote. Same reason he's going to pick a black woman to be his vice president candidate, because of pressures within the party, because of the movement at the time, and because he knows that will help get him elected. So, of course, he's going to do that. So we have to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour to build an inclusive middle class that brings everyone together. The irony of that, and there's a whole lot of irony about people on the left that like this. Now, Biden, again, is just a puppet. Biden's going to say what it takes to get him elected. And I think a lot of the people that are voting for Biden are just holding their nose because they hate Trump, and they'll vote for Biden. But the problem with a bunch of lefties, like the more progressive types in the party, which are taking over, by the way, for everyone who wants to pretend that's still blue-haired college kids and it's fringe, that group is taking over the Democrat Party. There's a war going on in the Democrat Party. And this right here is just more evidence that the establishment Democrats are losing that war. Now, if you're a progressive, you probably love that. And there are a lot of things that progressives push for that, hey, man, I actually wish, if we got less war, if we got, more civil liberties, if we ended the drug war, things like that, those are things that I would agree with. But this, Joe Biden doesn't actually believe this, I don't think. I don't even know that he would actually do it. But let's examine this for a little bit. For the progressive types that are holding their nose and voting for Biden because they didn't get Bernie, there's an interesting sort of irony about these hardcore anti-corporation, anti-Wall Street, anti-big business, the rich get richer while they just crush us under their fucking boot. Those people supporting a $15 an hour minimum wage, which is going to crush small businesses. Like if you're a startup mom and pop burger shop, $15 an hour is going to put you out of business. Almost all of them are going to be put out of business by that. Any sort of like small business coming up to compete with in a world where we have corporations like they are, and a world where they're so widespread and they have so much reach and power thanks largely to the government. A corporation is a state-created entity that's granted legal privileges because the government has fucked that up. It's going to fuck small businesses up even more than having to compete with these huge corporations is having another fucking leg cut out from underneath them and unaffordable wages for their employees. Now, this is a huge imposition, obviously, on an employer, but it also does restrict employees as well, because those of us who have ever tried to get jobs when we didn't have a lot of skills, for instance, most Americans who come out of high schools with a useless education that doesn't prepare you for anything that actually matters in the world, how to balance a checkbook, how to manage your money, it doesn't teach you any of that shit. Most Americans come out completely retarded in those regards. So you come out of high school with absolutely no skills to offer an employer that would get you more than maybe $8 an hour. Now, again, government runs the education system, has a practical monopoly on it, so that's a problem with the government. But when you come out, and now you're expecting a $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, this is another reason I think if you are going to have a minimum wage, which I'm against to begin with, but if you are going to do that, it has to be on a local level. It has to be somewhere way more local than the federal government imposing on all 50 states, every city, every county in the country, a $15 an hour minimum wage. And we're going to pretend that that is not going to hurt businesses. Guys, you don't have to be a libertarian. You don't have to be a conservative. You don't have to be any sort of political leaning or have any sort of political affiliation to understand why more than doubling the bare minimum wage on every business in the country is going to have some dire consequences. Now, obviously, again, Joe's doing this because Joe wants votes. But there's a lot of support for this. And if it's not a $15 an hour minimum wage, it used to be $10 an hour, or $10.10 was what they were pushing. And before that, it was $9 something an hour. The thing is, the lower the minimum wage is, as I've said before, the lower the minimum wage is, the less damage it does. This is going to do a lot of damage to the country if you impose a $15 an hour minimum wage on every business in the country. And to how it restricts employees, if you make a $15 an hour minimum wage, this means that if I'm a worker and I'm willing to work for $14 an hour, if I'm willing to work for $14.50, to bargain to try to get myself into a job, maybe to get experience, say, hey man, I'm willing to work. I'm willing to do this for $13 an hour. I'm willing to do this for $12. I'm willing to do this for $10. I need the experience. I need to get my foot in the door. The Joe Bidens of the world, the bureaucrats, the politicians, they're preventing you from doing that. At a $15 an hour minimum wage, any wage under $15 an hour, if it's $14.95 that your employer would be willing to work you at, that would now be illegal thanks to bureaucrats and politicians. Fuck off. The true minimum wage is $0. And that's what people can expect to make when their employer cannot make profit off of their labor. I'm sorry, that's a reality, guys. That's why you got to find yourself a knack in the market. You got to find yourself a trade, find yourself a skill. Don't get a useless college degree, but if you can get one and not go into debt doing it, that will actually put you a leg up over your competition, because businesses compete for labor. It's all supply and demand, guys. And you can do this. You can make more than the minimum wage. I mean, I live in a state that doesn't have a minimum wage, and I make well over $15 an hour. It's possible to do. It's possible to do this. And I hope everybody does it, by the way, because I don't like seeing people broke, having to work more than one job to make ends meet. By the way, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that is less than 4% of American workers that work more than one job. Just FYI. I mean, now it might be a little bit different because of the C-19 situation, but you get my point. But yes, this man is winning in the polls. This guy is, I would imagine this guy is probably going to beat Trump unless something big happens. Now, one big game changer for Trump would be if the debates happen, because I think Trump will dominate Biden in debates, because that's just tends to be where Trump shines. But as for me, there's only one Joe that I'm going to be voting for when the election time comes here in November, and that is going to be Joe Jorgensen. Joe Jorgensen has been on fire recently after that little bit of a gaffe over the supporting BLM, we must be actively anti-racist sort of tweets, which just was just like vomit to me. Just because the whole thing just reeks of that sort of like a bland statement from a corporation. Remember when all that shit was going around and all the these companies were putting out just like a black background with white letters, where basically all they're saying is like, we understand this thing happened. This thing is not good. Buy our shit. That's basically what they did. Well, that was basically Joe Jorgensen's "we must be actively anti-racist" tweet. But this here, Joe has been just on the warpath, knocking them out of the park. I mean, oh my God, like a presidential candidate quoting Rothbard. Look at that. Taxation is theft, purely and simple, even though it is theft on a grand and colossal scale, which no acknowledged criminals could hope to match. It is a compulsory seizure of the property of the state's inhabitants or subjects. Beautiful. I don't just like it, I love it. This will be who I'm voting for. She's redeeming herself. Now, obviously, unless something goes completely awry, I'm all about it. Like, I understand people are like, well, you vote for a third party or you vote libertarian. You know, you're basically just throwing your vote away. Fine. Am I not throwing my vote away for Joe Biden or Donald Trump? I mean, I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden anyways. I guess between the two, who would I prefer to win? I really don't even know. Like, the one upside of Joe Biden winning would be that Republicans will actually pretend they give a shit about spending. They'll actually go back on defense like they did during the Obama years. So there's at least that if Joe Biden was to win. But then again, Joe Biden is going to do some pretty awful things to the economy. I mean, Trump's doing some pretty awful things to the economy by growing the bubble. But Biden's gonna print and spend more because I'm afraid Trump's spending is the new normal. But anyways, Joe's knocking it out of the park. Now she is. Man, I would really encourage everybody to just kind of look in to Joe Jorgensen. Like, look, I get it. She's not going to win. I get it. As much as I want to see that happen, as much as I want to see somebody that actually has any bit of common sense have some power in Washington, D.C., I think that'd be amazing. But I have my doubts that it's going to happen. But I think at this point, I feel very comfortable more and more every day when I see a Jorgensen tweet or see some of the stuff she's saying about the war. The wars plural, because there's like 7 of them right now. More about like not inflating the currency, more about all the problems that we as libertarians, as in general, happen to agree with. I think she's on the money, and I would actually I consider it at this point. I'm actually excited to cast a vote for her. To say, hey, I pulled the lever for Jorgensen because hands down this was the best candidate running. But anyways, that's all for now, everybody. Sorry it's been a while since the last video. Been kind of busy, but stay tuned because there will be more.